Welcome to UnJustified, where we always cover the truth, the facts, the good, the bad, the ugly, on an unbiased and sometimes very unpopular opinion. If you're not already a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe now and hit the notification bell, and that way you will receive all of our upcoming videos. Thank you so much for being here, and we do hope you enjoy today's video.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody. Have I got an echo, y'all?
No.
Okay, good. Oh, I do on my end.
No, you don't. I don't hear an echo on my end.
It might be from her fan again.
Right?
Okay, got it.
There she
Got
is.
it, got it.
You're louder, too.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Yeah, I had a bad echo. It's like, okay, something's not right, and I was hearing my thing like 3 different times. I was like, oh, no, no, we're already late. We can't be doing this.
Right? Oh, my.
So how is everybody doing tonight? We got Vintage Art, Cotton Eye Joe, Red X, good to see you, girl. Mac J, Tony, Minnie Moons, Pippa, and Ray, Queen Olive. So good to see you all tonight.
Yes, it
This
is.
morning. This
Right?
morning. Yeah. We just been talking about this case, I mean, we're trying to get it wrapped up. Hopefully the very next episode will be the 4 and final. There's so much in this case. We just kind of was trying to do the best we could and putting it together. So far, we've been looking at back clips, like starting from the beginning. We're going to be doing that tonight as well. And then it won't be tomorrow because tomorrow's Wednesday, but Thursday when we pick it back up for the 4th and final, we'll be getting into, after her release, all that kinds of things. So, and then that's where we'll stop. And then you guys can continue to research her. I don't know. I would recommend buying that book, and you can, but whew, good Lord.
Yeah.
It's not made for television or for YouTube, that's for sure.
No.
No. See, the jury was able to get transcripts of the videos, and you'll hear that tonight. They got the transcripts, and one of the jurors wrote a book, and he put those transcripts in that book. And yes, he did get sued. I don't know if he won or not. Do y'all know? I don't know if he did or not, but
I never heard.
Yeah,
I
mean,
I don't remember hearing anything.
He must not have lost because they didn't pull the book. I don't know, but anyway, because the judge did rule that it could be heard, and things like that publicly, or transcripts and things like that, but just not watched. And who would want to watch that? just reading the transcripts, it's like you could. I have no words. You could.
They're triggering. They're very graphic and horrible.
Oh my God, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's a lot worse than even we were thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we knew the gist of the case and what happened with it, but to read the transcripts of those videos, oh my God, like you can't even imagine how bad it was. Yeah.
Guys, I physically got ill, threw up, and then began to cry for I don't know how long.
Oh my God. If some of that, I can't see how and I got a comment starred. Somebody even asked about it. It was Cotton Eye Joe. This is one of the worst cases I think I've ever heard details about. It just might be the worst. The thing of it is what I guess I didn't start. I meant to. I don't see, and I agree with the comment. How could they not negate that deal after they learned when seeing those tapes that she completely lied?
Yes, McJay asked that question too.
Yeah, that it was probably her then. How can they how could they not negate that? I don't know Canadian law,
Yeah,
but I just can't see how that, I mean, that was obstructing his attorney obstructed justice by holding those tapes out for 16 months.
yep.
That's a long time. That deal wouldn't have been made if that attorney hadn't have held those damn tapes out. And I also learned that while they were waiting on the trial, Karla was out here living her best life, sleeping with man after man after man. And get this, and I know you watched my premiere, it was either the girl she worked with or the one called Jane Doe. And I believe that that possibly is the same girl that she lured to their house. She was even contacting her, 15 years old, contacting her while she was awaiting trial to come and have a threesome with her and other guys she was seeing while she was awaiting trial.
Disgusting. Oh my God.
Absolutely blowing her phone up, constantly trying to get her to come and do this after her and Paul had
Done what they did. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, does this chick, I mean, so if she's doing that, waiting trial, I feel certain since she's been released, especially with her husband divorcing her and not letting her be with her kids, I know now that her oldest child is 16 years old today. That's scary. But you also got to think, this is her attorney's brother she married. There's no way in hell he didn't know what she did, probably even saw the tapes. And by the way, it's her female attorney's brother. She was actually staying with her female attorney while she was awaiting trial for 2 years. And it was her brother that she hooked up with.
That is insane.
Yep. And it was him that she was trying to get this 15-year-old girl that they had already done things to hook up with her and her new boyfriend, the one she ended up marrying. Now, there's no way this guy didn't know what she did, obviously. How in the hell, or how did he ever think that she was going to be a great wife and a perfect mom to have 3 kids with? You got to know this guy's sick too.
Well, you got to wonder why that he divorced her and took custody of the kids too, though.
Exactly. She even, in these transcripts, she was even telling Paul, while she was acting like her sister, she was telling Paul, I want to have 4 kids, she kept saying that their little personal virgin is gone now. So she wants to have 4 kids so they can have their way with them anytime they want to. She's literally saying this.
Mm-mm.
I mean, oh my God. It's just, this bitch.
That is.
Yeah.
No words.
I can't either. I'm like stumbling over here.
Yeah, there's really not any. I mean, there's no words except just what in the hell? Why wasn't that deal pulled back? In some ways, y'all, she's worse than Paul.
Yeah, it should have been, because one of the things was she's supposed to be telling the truth. So part of the truth would be is telling about the videotapes.
Exactly. And it looks to me like that the deal could have been pulled back since she went into it and got it telling lies. It's just, I don't know. It shouldn't have ever happened. She's worse than him in so many ways, if that's even possible. But my God, that was her sister. And then her saying, let's have 4 kids so we can, oh my God.
Oh, no, my stomach is just rolled.
Exactly. Ugh. Yeah, and her say, oh my God, I can't even say it no more. It's just too gross.
Hi, sweet crazy.
Look, y'all, somebody said that Karla, look at the poll. Somebody, at least 1 or 2 people, did say there was 20 votes. Karla was a victim of Paul. I'm not going to deny she was a battered wife. I mean, we looked at the bruises, right? So she was definitely a battered wife. I mean, no matter how you look at it, the bruises were there. But at the same time, that's it. She was not a victim.
No, she got off on that stuff too. So what do you do with that?
Exactly. I mean, no. And somebody said they're undecided, so maybe they don't know much about the case. Well, whoever put that one down, buckle up. Because I got a feeling by the end of this live, you won't feel that way. Surely not. But yeah. So, all right, Dave, Nelly, y'all got anything to say before we start these clips up?
No, I'm going to mute. I'm good to go.
No, I'm good too.
Yeah, they had to have hit the wrong button. Like, I don't know. Anyway, all right, let me get this going. And y'all, oh yeah, we need to give a little a warning tonight. Some of the stuff you'll hear tonight is graphic. Even though it is news clips, remember back then, the news wasn't as censored as it is today. Okay? So we do just want to throw that trigger warning out there. They are talking about the tapes. And so, yeah, we just wanted to let you know that right now before we start them. Okay? All right.
First-degree murder in the death of 15-year-old Kristen French a year later. Bernardo's ex-wife, Karla Homolka, is currently in prison for her role in the killings. In 1993, she was sentenced to 12 years for manslaughter. Details of her trial are under a strict publication ban, which has been imposed by the court. The media can only report the facts that come out in court during Paul Bernardo's trial. All the other details will remain banned until the current trial is over.
Will step back, please. The suspect is a young accountant named Paul Bernardo.
The first person charged is Karla Homolka. The general public is banned from the courtroom.
One of the most extraordinary criminal investigations this country has ever seen.
There will be another delay in the trial of Paul Bernardo.
Another twist today in a sensational murder case.
It's one of the most talked about crimes in Canadian history. 2 savage murders, a young, nice-looking husband and wife accused in the killings, and more twists and turns than anyone could have imagined. Now, the murder trial of Paul Bernardo is finally going to begin in earnest in this Toronto courthouse.
I, Paul, take you, Karla, be my wife.
In a way, the story begins the day Paul Bernardo married Karla Homolka, a picture-perfect ceremony on a sunny summer day near St. Catharines, Ontario. It's June 1991. It's the same day, just a few kilometers away, local fishermen are making a gruesome discovery. A young girl's body, cut into pieces, encased in concrete blocks, had been dumped in a lake. It was 14-year-old Leslie Mahaffey of Burlington, Ontario. She'd been missing for 2 weeks. The next spring, another girl, 15-year-old Kristen French, was abducted in broad daylight in St. Catharines. There was a massive search by the now frightened community. Kristen's family begged for her safe return.
We love you, Kristen, and we are constantly in our thoughts and our prayers.
2 weeks after she disappeared, her nude body was found in a dump, her long brown hair cut short. Police said she'd been held captive and sexually assaulted. 2 vicious, unsolved crimes in the same area.
Happy disappeared about 2 in the morning in Burlington, so people were kind of thinking, well, she was out too late or whatever. Kristen French was on a busy street, one of the busier streets in the north end of St. Catharines, just walking home from school. And then she's gone, she vanished. And I think that's just scared the hell out of a lot of people. If you're not safe, if you're not safe coming home from school on a busy street, where are you safe?
The investigation seemingly turned up little. Police even put together a TV show outlining clues, hoping for tips.
Dominant offender here in this case is truly a human predator.
But there were no known suspects. Months would pass. Then an arrest.
Paul Bernardo, also known as Paul Jason Teal, has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of unlawful confinement, 2 counts of kidnapping, 2 counts of aggravated sexual assault, and 1 count of causing an indignity to a human body.
Neighbors described him as normal, unassuming. His high school yearbook called him stud. Paul Bernardo lived in a pretty pink house in St. Catharines. It's empty now. When he was arrested, police spent 3 months searching through it. In the community, there was speculation and wonder.
You think of a suspect in a murder case as a seedy-looking guy, and here was a very, handsome-looking bookkeeper, very friendly with everybody, good, nice disposition, and a lot of the reaction was, the police got the right man. It was very surprising. Then you look at Karla, and she's, beautiful young woman, and people had a hard time with that.
Karla, the woman who'd married Bernardo in that summer ceremony less than 2 years earlier, had left him just before the arrest. When Bernardo was charged with murder, she was charged with manslaughter. But she's freed on bail and chooses to go straight to trial. Beyond that, not much can be reported. At her trial, the judge banned the public from the courtroom and foreign reporters. He allowed Canadian reporters in, but they were banned from publishing almost anything they learned.
She was convicted of manslaughter for the deaths of in the deaths of Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey, sentenced to 12 years. And I think that's about it. There's not a heck of a lot I can say.
As a reporter, how do you feel about it?
Frustrated as hell.
If reporters were frustrated, the people of St. Catharines were furious. The judge was booed when the trial ended. Soon, rumors and graphic stories began spreading despite the ban. The Washington Post published its version of the trial.
From the Washington Post comes the following details of the murder story banned in Canada.
So did American radio and television programs. Canadian cable companies usually blacked out the TV shows, and anyone caught distributing those stories, like this man, was stopped.
The court order?
Even so, the story was still available here to anyone with an internet connection on their computer.
Through all of this, Paul Bernardo sat waiting for his day in court. The Ontario government decided there would be no preliminary hearing, that he would go straight to trial. But it's turned out that the road straight to trial has been a long and twisted one.
During a court appearance by Bernardo last summer, the judge even chastised lawyers for letting the process drag on so long. Then, a month after that, Bernardo's lawyer, Ken Murray, was removed from the case.
Mr. Murray, will we find out today why you want off the case?
The reasons cannot be reported, though it has to do with certain videotapes that came into his possession, and authorities were very interested in how he got them.
The Ontario Provincial Police Criminal Investigation Branch, at the request of the Ministry of the Attorney General, is examining the circumstances that led to Mr. Ken Murray no longer representing Paul Bernardo.
Bernardo's new lawyer, John Rosen, then demanded time to go through the file.
More time the better, I don't know. I really don't have a sense of it, except that it's going to take a long time.
That was last fall. Since then, the media has fought and lost the battle to televise the trial. The question of whether those videotapes will be shown in open court is still undecided. Karla Homolka, meanwhile, spends her time at the prison for women in Kingston, Ontario, now 2 years into her 12-year sentence. She's expected to be a key witness against Bernardo. So what's finally clear is the whole story will come out soon in this courtroom. Jurors will now hear the case of Paul Bernardo and decide for themselves who did what in some of the grisliest crimes this country has ever seen.
The case has attracted enormous attention in Canada and other countries. This morning, dozens of reporters waited outside the courthouse, hoping for a comment from someone involved in the case.
Arguably Canada's most publicized murder trial. Yet these people say the lack of solid information surrounding the case drew them to the courthouse, some from as early as 5:30 in the morning.
I would like to see real justice done.
A shroud of secrecy surrounding the case, all the rumors that have been generated. Well, this is like our OJ, I guess you could say.
The circumstances surrounding this case are compelling by any account. But add to that the fact that a publication ban has been in effect, and you understand why so many are so anxious to get inside that courtroom.
I consider it undemocratic, but, I know they're saying it's, for the rights of the accused and all, although it's odd that the defense didn't want the publication ban.
There are 210 seats inside, 118 for the public, 60 for the media, with the remainder reserved for police, court officials, and families. In the last 24 hours, the Attorney General's office has received 40 additional requests from reporters from as far away as Paris and as close as Buffalo.
Single file up to the desk, please.
This scene will be replayed daily. Those who did get in say the experience was one of anger mixed with intense sadness.
I mean, girls getting dragged off the street and things like that. It bothers me that,
We met John Nealon going in.
You just start identifying with the family, start identifying with the victim. I'm sure her mother feels like she wishes she could have been there to help her daughter.
Let's just say that I'm speechless at this point.
The public is finally hearing the details of one of the most sensational murder cases in Canadian history. Today, the prosecution began its opening statement in the Paul Bernardo trial in Toronto. Until now, a publication ban prevented the media from saying much, but now the story is coming out. Prosecutors say Bernardo kidnapped, beat, sexually assaulted, and deliberately killed 2 teenage girls. Paul Hunter has the story, but first, a caution. Some of what he has to report may be disturbing.
The man who would tell a tale of horror to a packed courtroom, Crown Prosecutor Ray Houlihan, arrived early. On stage all day, The Crown, outlining a story few Canadians know or could even imagine. It was to the jury Ray Houlihan told the story that's expected to come from Karla Homolka, Bernardo's ex-wife, seen here on the right in jail, serving a 12-year sentence in the same killings Bernardo's charged in. Houlihan told the jury Homolka will detail a horribly abusive relationship with Bernardo, beatings to the point she became completely subservient to him. So subservient, Homolka agreed to help Bernardo drug and rape Karla's sister Tammy. Houlihan said evidence will show Bernardo sodomized her and made Karla perform oral sex on her unconscious sister, all videotaped by the couple. Evidence will show, says Houlihan, Bernardo thought Tammy would be a great Christmas present for him. Tammy Homolka started vomiting and died. It was Christmas Eve, 1990. The next year, Houlihan says evidence will show Bernardo grabbed Leslie Mahaffey from her own backyard in Burlington, Ontario, late one night. At knife point, he brought her to the Bernardo home in St. Catharines, and with Karla videotaping, repeatedly raped and beat a crying, blindfolded Mahaffey, then forced Karla to smile and perform oral sex on her. The Crown says evidence will show Bernardo feared Mahaffey would identify him, so he decided to kill her, strangling her with an electrical cord. While Bernardo and Homolka talked about what to do with the body, Mahaffey gasped for air. Bernardo strangled her again for 7 minutes. The next year, 1992, Houlihan says Homolka will testify they both abducted another girl, Kristen French, in broad daylight from a church parking lot. Back at their house, sodomy, beatings, repeated rape, all on videotape shot by Bernardo and Homolka. Houlihan says the evidence will show that within a day or so, Bernardo used the same electrical cord that killed Mahaffey to kill French.
So we know that Karla Homolka was involved in the death of her sister Tammy, as Paul pointed out. Homolka will testify against her ex-husband Paul Bernardo, and the jury will see videotapes that contain disturbing pictures of both victims, videos in which both Bernardo and Karla Homolka were participants. We also learned that the videotapes retrieved by Bernardo's former lawyer, Ken Murray, were in his possession for some 15 months. And so those were some of the questions that people had before yesterday, and we were able to sort of get some light to shine on those issues.
Maybe the most anticipated murder trial in Canadian history.
Thank you so much, Mac J. I really appreciate the extra support to the channel and your loyalty of always being here for us as well. I truly appreciate you.
And in Toronto, they lined up early to get a seat at the courthouse.
I would like to see real justice done here.
The prosecution is going to lay out its case, and that'll probably give me all the details, basically, that have been withheld.
Paul Bernardo is charged with the gruesome abductions, assaults, and killings of 2 Ontario schoolgirls. This morning, lawyer John Rosen arrived ready to defend Bernardo.
How was Paul Bernardo's state of mind last time you talked to him? Oh, fine.
The day will be taken up by the Crown's opening statement, explaining exactly what authorities believe Bernardo did. But inside, it was the Crown's day to tell its story. Prosecutor Ray Houlihan told jurors they would have to find Bernardo guilty of first-degree murder, that with the help of his wife, Karla Homolka, he killed Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French, strangling them with electrical cord after kidnapping, confining, and sexually assaulting them. Homolka, said Houlihan, will testify in this trial that she fell under Bernardo's control after physical and mental abuse. And for the first time, Houlihan told the story of Tammy Homolka, Karla's younger sister, who died in 1990. Houlihan said evidence will show Bernardo wanted to have intercourse with Tammy, so with Homolka's help, drugged Tammy one night, forced Karla to have sex with her, then he raped her. Tammy vomited and later died. Everything but the death, says Houlihan, was videotaped. It's the first time much of this story can be told publicly. From Bernardo's arrest in 1993 to legal wranglings, twists, and delays, it's been a case shrouded in court-ordered secrecy.
Single file up to the desk, please.
In a trial expected to last 2 to 4 months, the gossip and rumor will be put to rest. The truth will be told in court. More than 2 years after Bernardo was arrested, the 12 jurors who will decide his fate will finally hear the whole story, the case for and against Paul Bernardo.
For Crown prosecutors, it was time to tell the story of Leslie Mahaffey's night before her nightmare began. Mahaffey disappeared in Burlington, Ontario, the night of June 14, 1991. A friend, Martin McSweeney, talked about that night. A bunch of school friends were drinking together at a place known as The Rock. It was a party in honor of a friend who'd recently died. Hours later, McSweeney walked Mahaffey home, but the lights were out and the side door locked. McSweeney wondered if she'd be all right since it was so late. He testified she told him the front door would be open. And she said, "Yeah, I'll get in trouble and everything, but don't worry." So I said, "Okay, bye." It was just before 2 a.m. He left and never saw Mahaffey again. Then some unusual evidence, a videotaped statement from Mahaffey's best friend, Amanda Carpino. Carpino's pregnant now and says she fears she'd miscarry if forced to testify in front of Bernardo. Her story picks up where McSweeney's left off. She got a phone call, supposedly from this payphone, just after 2 a.m. It was Mahaffey. She was locked out of her house. She asked if she could come and stay at my house because she was past curfew. She wanted my mom to pick her up. I said no. I knew she wouldn't want to pick her up. They chatted for half an hour. Then Mahaffey said, "I guess I'll just go home."
These witnesses play a key role for the Crown. They place Leslie Mahaffey outside her home very late the night she disappeared. They take her to the time and place the Crown believes Mahaffey came face-to-face with Paul Bernardo.
As the Thursday before Easter weekend, 1992, Kristen French was walking through a church parking lot like she always did on her way home from school. That day, she never made it home. Police believed she'd been forced into a cream-colored Camaro. They spent weeks searching and tagging Camaros. Today, the woman who gave that description. Barbara Packham said she only got a glimpse, a couple of seconds as she was driving by the church parking lot. Packham saw a tall, slim-looking person in long pants leaning into an open passenger door. She said it looked like a struggle. The person was backing up and moving ahead. The thing that crossed my mind, she said, was teenagers fooling around. Packham told police the car was cream-colored. I'm not very good at describing cars, she testified. It was a sporty type that sloped at the front, similar to a Camaro. When shown a photograph of Bernardo's gold Nissan, Packham couldn't say whether that was the car she had seen. In its opening statement, the Crown told jurors it was the gold Nissan. It was Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka who forced French into the car, held her for 3 days in the Bernardo home, and murdered her, leaving her on their bedroom floor while they went to Karla's parents' house for Easter Sunday dinner.
Oh, that's horrific. So
An emotional Donna French testified her daughter was normally punctual. When she didn't come home from school that day, French called police. She said Kristen was wearing her school uniform and her loafers. One of Kristen's shoes came off during the struggle. It was spotted in the church parking lot the next day by at least 3 people. One of them was Horst Kuhn, still moved by the discovery.
Well, I have 4 daughters, and anything can happen these days.
Donna French was shown the shoe in court today. Can you identify this as belonging to your daughter? Asked the Crown. Yes, it is, she answered, weeping. A police officer also testified he found a map in the church parking lot. According to the Crown, Kristen French was lured to the Bernardo car when Karla Homolka held up a map and asked for directions.
She called her daughter a social butterfly, a girl with lots of friends. Donna French was on the stand today at the trial of Paul Bernardo. Bernardo is accused of murdering her daughter, 15-year-old Kristen French, and another Ontario teenager, Leslie Mahaffey. Donna French is the first family member of a victim to testify.
Her daughter was, and the last time she saw her daughter, she described how she drove her to school that morning of April 16th, what she was wearing. She described her daughter as a social butterfly, someone whose social life meant a great deal to her. She was always punctual, which is how her mother knew she was in trouble when she didn't return home from school that day. Described her as an athlete, a skater who skated 5 days a week and who had also been on a rowing team until she had to quit because of a back problem.
Here's a woman talking about the last time she saw her daughter alive, Anne-Marie. Did Mrs. French seem composed, seem in control?
She seemed to struggle to maintain her composure when she was on the stand. It was obviously very hard for her. Through it all, she sort of kept her composure until the very end, when the Crown asked her to identify a shoe that had belonged to her daughter and had been left at the scene and was recovered by police. And that's sort of when the emotion, that was the final question that she had to answer, and that was sort of when the emotion was almost too much for her.
Colleen, who followed Mrs. French on the stand?
Well, there were a series of witnesses that followed, people again describing what they saw Kristen French doing. Some friends of hers from school who saw her walking home from school alone that day, as she always did. It was just a short walk. A friend who described what she was wearing, who described what she was like, and also a woman who apparently saw a struggle in the church parking lot that day.
Did she give any details, Colleen, of that struggle that she saw?
She did. She said that she only saw it for a moment. She was driving by, saw for a couple of seconds what she thought looked like a person bent over, leaning in the passenger side of a car. She thought it looked like a struggle because the person was sort of moving back and forth. She went by it, didn't really think anything of it until the next day when she heard about Kristen French's disappearance and then called police.
Because of the time she said that she had seen students on the street, and when she saw the struggle, I guess she sort of just thought teenagers sort of playing around.
Yeah.
So that's why she didn't give it any significance at the time, she said on the stand.
Colleen, there was also the subject of Tammy Homolka's death in court today. What was that all about?
That came up quite unexpectedly, Norm. One of the police officers who had been involved in the search for Kristen French also happened to be an officer who was called to the Homolka home the night of Christmas Eve 1990 when Tammy Homolka died. And this officer actually took a statement from Karla Homolka and Paul Bernardo, who were engaged at the time. In fact, I have a copy of the statement with me. It's written in Paul Bernardo's handwriting, and this was described today. Paul Bernardo talks about what they were doing that evening, how they had sat down to watch a movie, were having a few drinks. He claims that he fell asleep on the couch and was awakened by the sound of Tammy vomiting, being sick, gasping for air, that he tried to revive her doing CPR while Karla Homolka called 911. Of course, the Crown contends that Tammy Homolka was assaulted that night by both Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka.
Yeah. And Marie, we've talked about Paul Bernardo watching all this. What were your impressions of him today in the court?
He's, as he has been through much of this, he's very involved in his case. He's, throughout a lot of what was said today, he would be writing notes, copious notes in this notebook that he has with him in the box, and handing them over to his lawyers throughout it all. He certainly seems very, very interested in everything that goes on.
Very composed as well, though. Yeah. Very serious, always looking straight ahead, often at the jury.
Disturbing testimony in the Paul Bernardo trial in Toronto. Today, while family members listened, witnesses described finding Leslie Mahaffey's body parts in a lake in southern Ontario.
Lake Gibson is a popular fishing hole near St. Catharines. It's also where the Crown alleges Paul Bernardo dumped Leslie Mahaffey's body parts in June of 1991. Michael Doucette was fishing with his son 2 weeks after Leslie Mahaffey went missing. On the shoreline, a shocking discovery: concrete blocks.
It seemed to be what looked to me like blood on the outside, congealed. So in order to make sure of what I was looking at, I tilted the lid off the other piece and immediately seen the lower limb, the leg and foot, and the other thigh.
Doucette told court how he asked his son to stay put while he flagged down first some passing cars, finally a passing fire truck. When police arrived, they found 7 concrete blocks lining the secluded shore. The water levels on Lake Gibson had receded. In court, graphic photographs of those blocks and their contents. Spectators and reporters strained to see them on a TV screen on the defense lawyer's desk. Debbie Mahaffey was distraught, eventually moving from her designated seat, positioning herself behind the defense lawyers and the TV screen as if to block it. She kept her head bowed and her eyes closed. The day after the blocks were found, June 30th, 1991, police divers were searching the murky water off a nearby bridge. Another fisherman had spotted a torso floating there. Divers found another concrete casing. All of the blocks were examined by forensic experts. They removed hair and bone fragments, some pieces of cardboard, a piece of latex, some chips of black paint. The body parts were eventually identified as Leslie Mahaffey's using dental records.
I was fishing with my son, and a gentleman put a boat in to the right of where, actually right around where the blocks of cement were found with the body parts. And he indicated to me that I should look at them. And he proceeded to put his boat in the water and took off when boating. I assumed he was just pulling my leg because later on when I did look at them, I immediately tried to do something about it. They were, body parts, and I went and flagged people down. And they in turn, I don't know whether they phoned the police or not. Finally, a fire truck came by. I flagged it down, and they phoned the police there, their station, and who in turn phoned the police. Let's say I haven't really enjoyed fishing since. I have a boat in my driveway I haven't used since that day. I'm starting to get back into it now. Over the 3 years or so, it's been a common occurrence dealing with it. Not so much dealing with it, it's just thinking about it and putting it back in the back of my mind, and now having to face it directly in front of the accused, as well as the Crown and judge and public. It's different. I was apprehensive, nervous.
It was very difficult today. I personally found it quite uncomfortable being in the courtroom. Murder trials almost always have difficult evidence, particularly when you get into forensic evidence and into details of what happens at an autopsy and what is exactly found at the scene of a crime or where a body has been. It's always difficult, and this was no exception.
And one of the problems here is that the Crown has to anticipate what the defense is going to do. It doesn't really know what the defense is. So they have to go into absolute detail, minutiae, intricate, clinical detail on how the bodies appeared and what was inside each concrete block, and it just goes on. It's soul destroying to hear the detail they have to go into and feel they must. It certainly took some time before the police were able to identify who the actual victim was. They had to use dental records as their primary purpose. But yes, they knew they were dealing with a body, and they knew they were dealing with a female, but beyond that, there was a fair amount of decomposition.
Some of the photographs were put up on a video monitor. The courtroom here is quite well equipped with all the modern gadgets you would want to have. They weren't displayed on video monitors that clearly faced the spectators in the courtroom, but you could see these images on a video monitor that was sitting on the desk of the defense attorneys. At one point, the Mahafis actually moved from their designated seats over so that they could sit right behind that monitor. I felt it was as if they wanted to block it because they really didn't look at the screen. In fact, Debbie Mahaffey kept her eyes down and, as far as I could tell, did not look up once at what was being shown there. It seems to be a very attentive, very interested jury, and they seemed quite composed today, in my opinion.
They seem to have really psyched themselves up for what the ordeal they're going through here, because they often look to be the most composed people in the courtroom. So they just must have prepared themselves over the long weekend for what they knew was coming.
And her friend said on video today that Leslie was afraid that if she got home late, woke up her parents, missed her curfew, that she wouldn't be allowed to go to the funeral, which was the next day.
The Paul Bernardo trial is making headlines across the country, but nowhere is the trial being watched more closely than in St. Catharines. The southern Ontario city is home to 130,000 people. It's where Paul Bernardo lived. It's where Kristen French lived. Leslie Mahaffey came from nearby Burlington. The murders set off a wave of fear in the community, a fear that still lingers today.
Well, David Weeks was a new cop, barely had his feet wet when he was called to the Homolka home Christmas Eve, 1990. Tammy Homolka had stopped breathing, apparently after choking on her own vomit. A statement given by Paul Bernardo that night said he and his fiancée, Karla, had been sleeping on the couch when they awoke to the sound of Tammy's gasps. Weeks testified he saw Tammy lying on a bedroom floor. Paramedics had already arrived and were trying to revive her. She had red marks on her face. Her skin looked gray. Weeks stayed at the Homolka home with Paul, Karla, and her older sister, Lori. When word came from the hospital Tammy was dead, Weeks said Lori and Karla began to cry quite softly. Paul began to cry vigorously. He pulled his knees up to his chest and started to rock back and forth. He pulled his hair while shouting no. Lori rushed out of the room. Weeks followed. When he returned to the basement, he heard the sound of a washing machine. He found Karla trying to wash a vomit-soaked blanket. Something else caught Weeks' attention. When he began to question Paul, he suddenly offered this. "Officer, there were absolutely no drugs involved." Weeks testified he had never asked about drugs.
That should have been a flag right
Constable
there.
Ken Mitchell took over from there. He interviewed Paul and Karla later at the police station. The 25-year veteran thought the marks on Tammy's face were caused by vomit, but wanted to wait for the post-mortem results to be sure. Under cross-examination today, Mitchell admitted police allowed items gathered from the Homolka home to be destroyed 2 months before he received the final post-mortem report. In the end, Tammy's death was ruled accidental.
Wow.
Put it this way, it wasn't a good feeling. Like my stomach, I felt sick. Even when I got to the young guy's house and that, I was all white and pale. And his mother come in and she says, "Gee, you look awful. What's the matter?" I said, "I just found the body up the road, a little ways from your house." And she asked me if I wanted something to drink in that because I was really white. She thought I was going to pass out. So I felt really sick. I've never found the body in my life. It's the first time. Oh yeah, especially with bringing it up today and seeing photos. It gives butterflies in your stomach, tightens right.
He said that he was driving along looking for scrap metal, the kind of thing he used to do, looking for metal that he could salvage for a little bit of money. He drove by a wooded area and saw what he thought looked like a conveyor belt, so he got out of his car and walked into the bush to have a look at it. Then he saw what he thought was a piece of pink carpet, and when he approached it, he quickly realized that that was not it at all and that it was a human body. at which point he went to a nearby home and called police.
He is quite traumatized, obviously, by his find. He's a rather simple living man, lived his life very much in a blue-collar way. His likes are essentially bingo and beer, and he hasn't been able to put this out of his mind. He has a young daughter much the same age, and it has traumatized him very much.
Of the body, it was difficult testimony, as this kind of testimony always is. He says that he noticed dark marks on Kristen French's back, what he thought looked like bruising on her face, and a photograph of the body clearly showed a dark black line across Kristen French's throat.
Cross-examination of Shaw was essentially very brief. Kristen French's body was found lying on a pile of what appeared to be branches and debris, and it was sparsely covered with dead undergrowth. A lot of the lines on the faces on the pictures that I saw during the break were in fact caused by the twigs and brushes. These were indentation marks.
I had seen during the photos of the discovery of Leslie Mahaffey's body, we had seen Mrs. and Mr. Mahaffey go across the courtroom and sit behind the defense team's table where a monitor sits, where the public can see these pictures. And they did the same thing today on two separate occasions. That's right. At one point walking straight across the court and sitting down in that second row again as if to block the images. The Frenches remained in their seats and remained very composed through the entire ordeal.
Yes, Norman, it should be noted that these pictures were in fact only of Kristen French and not of Leslie Mahaffey. It is clearly a protest that the monitor still being turned on John Rosen and Tony Bryant's desk. It is clearly noted in the court that, in fact, everyone's eyes turns to the Mahaffeys when they walk across the courtroom.
One of the young police officers involved testified today about him being at the Homolka home when all of this was unfolding, and he was the first one to question Karla, Paul, and Karla's older sister, Lori. And he said that when news came that Tammy had died in the hospital, Lori and Karla began to weep softly, and that Paul began to weep very loudly and very vigorously, and that he brought his knees up to his chest and clutched his knees and began rocking back and forth and pulling on his hair and saying, no, no, no. Some pretty strange things followed, I think.
Yes,
Al,
well, Lori Homolka left the room and went to her own bedroom upstairs, and Constable David Weeks followed her there just to make sure she was okay. Upon his return back to the basement some 3 to 4 minutes later, he heard the sound of what he thought was a washing machine, and on further investigation, he did in fact find it was a washing machine. He observed Karla Homolka inserting into the washing machine a vomit-stained blanket and a vomit-stained towel that he had seen earlier on the sofa where Tammy Homolka had been lying before Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka purportedly took her into the bedroom to perform CPR.
And he was able to stop her from doing that. And
Yes.
then after that, he says that Paul Bernardo, he explained to them that they were going to have to go down to the police station and give a more detailed statement. And Paul Bernardo apparently asked him, well, can I change my pants before I go? And the officer said yes. And Bernardo went into the bedroom in the basement where Tammy Homolka had been laying when the paramedics arrived, went in there and closed the door. Well, the officer, young but apparently sharp enough to follow him in and say, look, you've got to leave the door open a little bit here.
And it should be said also that prior to that, Bernardo actually went into the washroom and closed the door. This preceded his request to change his pants.
Only the judge, lawyers, and the jury to see them. But Bernardo's lawyers and the media fought back. They argued in a free and open court system, evidence against the accused, no matter what it is, must be made public. That someone other than those assessing Bernardo's guilt must see the tapes played in court. The judge reserved his decision. Jury was being selected. The judge asked all prospective jurors, are they physically and emotionally able to sit through the trial, during which you will be asked to look at explicit videotapes many will find disturbing. When the trial began, the Crown described in its opening statement how disturbing that might be, telling jurors the videos will show Bernardo raping the victims and beating them, and they show his wife, Karla Homolka, participating, that both victims are seen in pain, their hands and ankles bound. Given that, the family's lawyers said maybe the media would back off on its fight to see the tape.
There's a big difference between informing the public and getting into matters that just aren't necessary.
So the question is whether it is necessary that the public see all the evidence against Paul Bernardo, or whether it's more necessary to protect the memory of the victims and their families from further trauma. It's a question Justice Patrick Lesage will have to answer.
We saw that Dorothy Homolka, Karla Homolka's mother, was on the stand for much of the day today as a witness for the prosecution. Colleen, what was her demeanor like in court?
She was very straightforward today, very firm in her answers, quite unemotional, actually. Her voice quavered a little bit at times when she was talking about her daughter, Tammy, but otherwise she was very straightforward and quite unemotional, I thought.
Dorothy, she started out by talking about the relationship of her daughter, Karla, with Paul Bernardo.
Yes, she did. And they took us through the sort of preliminaries, the pre-engagement period, and it's quite clear that Karla was in quite a swoon over this guy, and that he was a very charming gentleman who treated her like most of her other dates never did. I mean, it was opening the car door, bringing flowers, a bottle of wine for the family, just everything that a perfect young gentleman would do.
And Colleen, then she got on to what she would have thought of as darker times, I take it.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, she talked about what she perceived to be a change in their relationship, although Dorothy Homolka admitted under cross-examination that she didn't really notice that change or didn't really suspect that her daughter was being physically abused until sometime after Kristen French was killed. And that, of course, is going to be a big issue in this trial in terms of when this alleged abuse actually started with Karla.
That's right, Colleen. The prosecution is clearly trying to drag that timeline back as far into the relationship as they can. I would think it appeared today that the best they can do is somewhere after the first anniversary of their wedding, which would be June '92, and which is well after both murders, and leading up to the rather horrible ending of this relationship, which of course we saw through the photographs today, and a rather horrible beating Karla did get at the very end. It was quite shocking, actually.
And the defense really did quite an interesting job today on changing the notion of when the abuse actually started. At one point, a very spirited point in the cross-examination, John Rosen, who's Paul Bernardo's lawyer, said to Dorothy Homolka, "Your daughter, when she came back from her honeymoon, didn't have any bruises on her, did she?" Because, of course, the Crown has alleged that Karla called her honeymoon the honeymoon from hell because Paul beat her. And John Rosen says to her mother, she didn't have any bruises on her. In fact, she was dancing around in her bikini at your pool that summer, wasn't she? And Dorothy Homolka answered yes.
What did Dorothy Homolka say when she started to talk about the death of her daughter, Tammy?
Well, she was very emotional there, and it's quite clear that this is the third family involved in these tragic events, and obviously they've been overlooked, and they're caught up in it in a very different way than the Frenches and the Mahafis. But it was quite clear from her answers, and particularly late in the day when her daughter Lori took the stand, that they've been devastated by these events. And I believe she said that Dorothy said a part of me went with her, and she said no one knows what it's like to lose a child. And she didn't break down. She was very composed, but she left no doubt about the impact of Tammy's death on her and her husband.
Colleen, why is the whole issue of the death of Tammy coming up when her death is not involved in the charges against Paul Bernardo?
It's not involved in the charges for the purposes of this trial, but the Crown alleges that this whole incident with Tammy was the foundation. It was really the germ that led to all of the other events that happened in this case, that it was in the Crown's words, a horrible secret that Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka shared, and that Paul Bernardo used this secret to control Karla and to threaten her and to tell her, look, if you ever leave me, I will tell your family what really happened to your sister. And that the Crown's contention is that is partly why Karla stayed in this relationship, and partly why she admitted to going on and helping to kidnap and assault young girls.
In fact, there was videotape today showing, and I believe the first piece is from the night that Tammy died, Colleen.
That's correct, and we should put this in the context of what the defense was trying to do with this videotape. This was introduced by the defense, which was trying very hard to portray the Homolka home as let's say, not traditional. I mean, that there was a lot of drinking that went on, that Tammy was only 15 and that she had been drinking, that Mr. Homolka would call his wife bitch and would say, "Get me a beer, bitch," which Mrs. Homolka said was their way of joking around. So the video that we're actually going to show you does pick up on Christmas Eve 1990, and it is, I guess, one of the last times that Tammy Homolka is shown alive.
All right, wait, what are you drinking there?
Ice.
Ice? Ice, baby, to go?
No.
Okay, let's see what's up. We have the television, and we have La Karla drinking, and La Lori, which is absolutely not drinking.
Darcy Jenish, there was a second piece of videotape. This, I guess, exactly a year later at the home of Paul Bernardo.
That's right, Ann. It's Christmas '91, which is after the Leslie Mahaffey murder, a year after Tammy's death. And this is a living room scene showing the opening of presents. And everybody's happy. There's, as John Rosen pointed out several times, no bruises, no scratches, no cuts. Karla's a happy young woman, recently married. And in fact, they went from a living room scene to a scene in which Lori tries on Karla's wedding dress, and then Karla is pictured in the wedding dress. And so the object of the defense here is to portray Karla as still very happily married, a full participant in this relationship, and to undermine any suggestion that this whole thing was coercion and that she was an unwilling participant.
So let's have a look at that particular picture.
Yeah, you look at it.
Yeah, they're the best.
All right. Do you like those? They're good.
Buddy, don't eat that.
What's he eating? Don't eat the paper, bud. It's the bones for you.
Just like a kid, a baby. They open the front door.
Buddy, sit. Isn't that beautiful?
Unlike other Crown witnesses, the Homolka family was escorted to court in a van. Karla's mother, Dorothy, about to face her former son-in-law. Homolka rarely looked at Bernardo, and in a strong voice that quavered slightly at times, she described the night her daughter Tammy died. The death was ruled accidental, but prosecutors say Paul and Karla drugged and sexually assaulted Tammy in the basement of the Homolka home.
This is Christmas 1990. Everybody.
Bernardo's lawyer played this video of the night Tammy died. Paul was running the camera.
Mom, stream close up.
Whoa!
At just 7 o'clock, John Rosen suggested 15-year-old Tammy Homolka was drunk enough to slur her words.
Is this supposed to be?
Are you in the Christmas cheer? That's all I want to know.
Yeah.
You are?
Rosen portrayed the Homolka family as drinkers. Karl Homolka as a man who called his wife bitch, often saying, "Get me a beer, bitch," in front of the children.
Okay, ready?
We're going to do extreme close-up,
Ready?
okay?
Extreme close-up. Whoa!
Dorothy Homolka did not disagree, saying they were always joking around. Homolka testified she'd once seen her daughter with a broken finger, and once with eyes so black, court photographs showed she looked like a raccoon. That's exactly how Crown prosecutors have portrayed Karla, as an abused wife, so afraid her husband would tell the truth about Tammy's death, she would not leave him. Karla allegedly described their honeymoon as the honeymoon from hell because Paul beat her. In a spirited cross-examination, John Rosen challenged Dorothy Homolka. She didn't have raccoon eyes or marks on her body from getting whacked around when she came home from that honeymoon, did she? No, Dorothy Homolka answered. In fact, she pranced around your pool in a bikini, didn't she? I think so, came the response. It didn't look like the honeymoon from hell, did it? No. Homolka admitted she never suspected her daughter was being abused until almost a year after Kristen French was murdered. She and Karla had written them about a week after Father's Day, 1991. That was when Leslie Mahaffey's body was allegedly hidden in the couple's root cellar. On the message board, Karla had written, "Hello, my love, my most wonderful husband. I love you. Your wifey, Carly Curls." And "I love you, Paul. I'm so glad you're home." Lori also confirmed Paul had been on holiday in Florida, leaving Karla alone. Again, the defense was trying to show Karla had many chances to go to her parents or the police. Late this afternoon, Justice Patrick Lesage released his ruling on the videotape, tape showing the brutal assaults of Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey. Lesage ruled the public and the media will be able to hear the audio from the tapes, but not see them. The families will suffer tremendous psychological, emotional, and mental injury if the evidence, as the Crown has described it in the opening statement, is publicly displayed, the judge said. Open justice is a concept, a principle that can be more than adequately achieved without pictorially displaying the indignities suffered by these young victims. The judge, the jury, and lawyers will watch the videos on television monitors that will be turned away from courtroom spectators. The Crown will begin showing the videos tomorrow.
Today, Judge Patrick Lesage ruled reporters and the public will not be able to see the tapes, only court officials and the jury. But the audio portion will be played for anyone in the courtroom to hear.
Well, he essentially says that there's no societal value in showing these graphic images in open court. He's saying that the families of the victims would suffer irreparable harm if these images were shown, and that open justice can still be served by showing these tapes to the jury and allowing courtroom spectators to hear the audio, but not see the graphic evidence. We know that it involves a sexual assault, that it involves a woman identified only as Jane Doe, and that it will also be part of videotapes that are shown that no one will see. The feeling is that Jane Doe's identity and her privacy needs to be protected. She, of course, is still alive.
She was allegedly drugged and sexually assaulted, the Crown alleges, by Bernardo and Karla Homolka. What grabbed my attention, I thought was quite interesting, I know we were talking about earlier, that after Karla was assaulted in January of '93, the parents were concerned about her, and they went to the house and told her it was time to go, took out her belongings, and she literally had to be dragged from the house. They talked about putting the grab on her, words to that effect.
Yeah, that the father actually had to physically take her and say, "You're coming.
You're coming with us." They took her out of the house, and later she went to hospital. She was in hospital for about 3 days, and the bruises lasted about a month. The tapes are going to have to be, they were enhanced, but in spots, the tapes are going to be virtually inaudible. And for us in the gallery, the press corps, I'm not sure how we're going to follow it. When the public monitors were turned on, we listened to the sound out of there, but the nearest monitors now will be the two big screens in front of the jury. Whether or not we're going to catch that sound, who knows? I mean, I guess we'll have to wait till tomorrow and find out.
Yeah, this expert made it pretty clear that at some point the audio is very low on the tapes, and he described how he had to take out the sound electronically, the sound of the motor of the camera running, for example. So it sounds like they have had to enhance the audio quite a bit just to make it audible.
One of the tapes is called, that he had labeled, was Red Hot Chili Pepper. This is just the name he put on the label on the outside. The other one was Tammy, Karla, and me.
The Bernardo trial has seen the first of the controversial videotape evidence. The Crown says the tapes show Bernardo and his then fiancée, Karla Homolka, performing sex acts on Karla's unconscious sister. Today's evidence was the first of a total of 4 hours of tapes the jury will see. With more, here's Colleen McEdwards, but we warn you that this report is disturbing.
The Crown has described the video evidence as worth a million words. But words were all courtroom spectators who lined up as early as 4:30 this morning heard today.
That's it for today, guys. Sorry.
The videotape was not shown on TV monitors, but the sound could be heard over the courtroom's speaker system. Jurors, the judge, lawyers, and Paul Bernardo watched on their own TV screens, hidden from public view.
There's only one there, right?
There's only one what?
The video was of an assault on Karla Homolka's sister, Tammy. It was shot several hours after this video was taped, Christmas Eve, 1990. Tammy died later that night. The dialogue was difficult to hear. There was heavy breathing and rustling around. Bernardo tells Karla to go down, to shut up. Put your fingers inside, he says. No, Karla responds. Do it now, quick. Disgusting, Karla says. Videotape shot in the Bernardo home involving Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey haven't been viewed in court yet. But the Crown showed jurors photographs, freeze frames taken from those videos. The pictures show Leslie Mahaffey blindfolded, her wrists tied behind her back, and Bernardo naked behind her. They show Kristen French in her school uniform, leaning over Bernardo. He's lying on his back, holding what looks like a knife in his left hand. Jurors also got their first look at physical evidence taken from the Bernardo home. 2 sets of handcuffs, black electrical cord, and a knife with a 6-inch blade.
The first of what's described as disturbing videotape was shown today at the Paul Bernardo murder trial. The Crown says the tape shows Bernardo and his ex-wife, Karla Homolka, sexually assaulting her sister Tammy. Television monitors in the courtroom were turned away from the public, but sound from the tape was heard on courtroom speakers.
Well, you certainly could hear what was on the tapes. At times there was whispering, and at times it was difficult to hear, but the sound was projected through loudspeakers in the courtroom, so people could generally hear. Some of the spectators who came out after court were quite upset. There was a young girl who was crying, an older gentleman who said that that he not showing them because he felt that what he had heard was so suggestive and so graphic in and of itself that he had some very disturbing mental images about what must have gone on.
At the same time, I might add, there was a lot of puzzlement. That was the other big reaction. There's so much that you cannot tell from just hearing this little bit of dialogue and clicks and strange sounds and occasional panting. I mean, that's what we're all trying to interpret.
Can't tell, Kirk, in the sense that it's not audible enough, or it just doesn't make sense. Without seeing the picture, you don't really know what's happening.
This tape in particular makes very little sense without seeing it. They were whispering at the time. This took place in the basement of the Homolka home. They obviously didn't want to call attention to what they were doing, so you can hardly make out any of the words, and those you can. Sometimes there were people in the hallway. There were these knots of people, particularly the reporters, trying to figure out what was going on.
I was just going to say that. I think the knots of people were almost exclusively reporters, that, we were the ones who were more concerned about trying to report this act thought we heard, and it's very difficult without the aid of the image and the aid of a transcript or anything like that. There's a lot of noise on the tape, but
there were times we couldn't tell whether it was Karla or Bernardo who was saying something because of the tone of the whisper, and that makes it very difficult.
Colleen, I don't want you to go into too much detail here, but can you give me a sense of the sort of things you were hearing on the tape in the courtroom?
Well, you were hearing dialogue between Paul and Karla. You heard a lot of rustling around and knocking noises on the camera. You could clearly tell that instructions were being given about what to do, and that a sexual assault was being performed on Tammy Homolka.
Who was explaining all this, Kirk? Who was describing what was actually going on?
Well, there was a very brief description from the Crown Attorney at the beginning as to what was going to be on that tape, but it really didn't suffice. After that, you were pretty much on your own if you didn't have the video images. Really, I think the only thing that we in the body of the court could be fairly sure of was that at the beginning, it sounded as if they were both cooperating. They were both part of this little whispered conspiracy. The first couple of minutes of whatever it is that they were doing to this unconscious girl. And then it appears that he is insisting upon Karla performing certain acts, and she is protesting more and more as they go along.
There's an escalation. There's a feeling of an escalation.
Now, Colleen, the jury was also shown tape of the Homolkas at home. There were photographs taken from other videotapes, weapons. What was all that about?
Well, there's a lot of videotaped evidence in this trial, and that's become clear. Some of it very sensitive, as you've just heard. Other evidence is more to show the relationship among the families and among the people, and some of that we saw today, although some of that was upsetting to some people in the courtroom. There was one scene where Paul, Karla, and her 2 sisters had gone to visit Karla's parents in New York, and they were there for a Christmas light show, and all it really was the videotaping of some of the pretty lights. There were Christmas carols playing, and it seemed so very peaceful and so ironic given what we assume happened after that, and that was very upsetting to some people.
Obviously, the Mahaffey and French families were in the courtroom today. Were they seeing the video or just hearing the sound?
Well, like the rest of us, they cannot see the graphic videos, such as the one involving Tammy, and they will not be able to see them, but they will be hearing exactly what we're hearing. And I think it's fairly clear that as we get into the rest of the videos, especially the ones involving their daughters, the audio is going to be a lot clearer because there was nothing to hide. These acts took place in the Bernardo home. There wasn't other family around to try and be furtive about. So it's probably going to be very graphic and very, very tough for them to take.
Yeah. By the way, Colleen, does anyone know where the Bernardo family is? Do any of the Bernardo family ever show up in the courtroom?
They have never shown up in the courtroom and apparently are not expected to. The jury, we should add, remained quite composed throughout all of this. Before the videotape was played, the judge said to them, I want to remind you, the images are going to be disturbing. If any of you want to break at any time, get my attention, whatever, we'll stop. He indicated that they're not going to go for longer than 45 minutes when they're watching these kinds of things, but they remain very composed.
The families of Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French are taking their fight to the Supreme Court of Canada. Their lawyer, Tim Danson, is asking the court to overturn a ruling that allows the public to hear but not see graphic videotapes. The Crown says those videos show Paul Bernardo sexually assaulting Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French. But even as the families of the victims applied to appeal, explicit tapes were being played in court. However, they did not involve the two teenagers that Paul Bernardo was accused of abducting and murdering. Colleen, what can you tell us about Tim Danson's appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada?
Well, the lawyer for the families has asked the Supreme Court of Canada to hear this appeal. There has not been a decision yet on whether the court will, in fact, hear the appeal, and I understand we'll be getting some more information about that tomorrow.
Marie, have you heard anything from the families, the Mahaffey or the French families, how they feel about this?
I haven't heard about what's happening with the appeal, but I spoke to them after the French family after the ruling. The judge first released his ruling. I spoke to Kristen's brother-in-law. He's the family spokesperson, and he just released a brief statement basically saying the family was happy that pleased that the videotapes would not be shown in court, but disappointed that the restriction did not apply to the audio portion. And they said at that time that was all they were going to be saying at that time.
Yeah. What was seen, or I should say, what was heard today, Colleen?
Well, actually, we did see images today. There was a videotape actually shown on the public monitors. It was shown because it did not involve any of the alleged victims here or any non-consensual acts. It was a video showing Paul and Karla shortly after the death of Tammy Homolka, Karla's sister. And they were engaged in sexual acts in the Homolka home. And they were talking as if they were following a bit of a script, a bit of a role-playing fantasy, talking about Tammy's death and fantasizing about other things that they might do to other girls.
And Anne-Marie, any obvious reaction from the jury as these tapes were played?
The jury their faces are fairly focused, fairly expressionless in a way, but we're seeing these tapes 3 times. So once the first one that we saw was played the third time through, one of the jurors put up his hands and said, can we have a break now? Because obviously it was just sort of wearing on them a little bit.
Yeah, they look a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's very explicit, though not violent. It's
very
explicit
graphic.
Sexually, and it's difficult to watch.
And another juror at one point put up her hand and asked the judge if she could, what they did if they disagreed with the transcripts in front of them. All the jurors now have been given transcripts for the second viewing of the tapes.
Colleen, we touched on this briefly yesterday. Why are the tapes being played 3 times?
Well, that's an agreement that the Crown and the defense have reached, and they feel that because the images are going by so quickly and because in some cases the sound is actually quite poor, that the jurors need to see them 3 times. Once where they're to focus on the images that they're seeing, a second time where they're to focus on the transcript that Anne-Marie just mentioned that they have in front of them, where they focus on the words that are being spoken, and a third time, if necessary, not all the tapes today were shown 3 times, but if necessary, where they can watch again and where the Crown or the defense, the Crown is doing this right now, but the defense eventually would be able to ask that the tape be stopped and would be able to point out certain things that jurors might want to notice in the tapes.
And Anne-Marie, I know that with the French and Mahaffey families in the courtroom. They hear these sounds as the tapes are played and replayed.
Right.
How have they reacted to this?
Well, as Colleen had mentioned before, they had left during once this repeat playing is being done, they leave because obviously this is very hard for them. It's not showing their children, but it's very difficult for them to watch this explicit stuff in court and think, and probably in their minds think of what's to come.
They've never walked out of the courtroom before during the playing of tapes or any evidence of any kind, have they, Colleen?
No, they never walked out, but the Mahaffeys at one point were walking across the courtroom when some of the photographs were being shown. And they weren't being shown on the public monitors, but you could see them on one of the monitors in front of the lawyers. So they were sort of making a point of walking across and sitting down as if to block that. Today, on 2 occasions, they did walk up and actually leave the courtroom.
And eventually, that's 2 rows of people basically leaving.
And eventually they just didn't come back when it became clear that the tapes were going to be played all day.
And Marie, is the Crown saying why they're introducing evidence of this kind?
They're not speaking specifically to each segment as they introduce it, but they've said earlier on that they are introducing these things that may not seem to have anything to do with the crimes against the 2 victims because of what they say it says about the relationship between Paul and Karla. And that's sort of the nature of all this.
And that was very important today in terms of the dialogue that was heard on the tape and in terms of Karla, calling Paul the king, and they seem to be following this sort of script and talking about Tammy Homolka's death. The Crown contends that this sets out their relationship, that this shows who's leading whom and what the relationship is like.
But obviously a lot of people that I talked to, a lot of people in the public who were in there, when they left, they're wondering, why is this being shown?
True.
They're a little puzzled by it all, and they wonder what it has to do with the crime.
And I gather, Colleen, a lot of people who came to that courtroom today just to watch left shortly after the first tape was played.
They did. The first tape was played. It took about a half an hour, and then it became clear that they were getting ready to play it for that second time for the jurors to focus more on the audio. And at least half that courtroom got up and walked out, and many of the public seats were empty.
And as they walked out, I was down on the escalator with a lot of them were just shocked to see it. I guess they clearly hadn't expected to be seeing anything, probably since the judge's ruling. They had just thought it applied to everything and hadn't expected to see anything.
The controversy over the graphic evidence at the Paul Bernardo murder trial could soon move to the Supreme Court of Canada. The parents of Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey are upset the public is being allowed to hear videotapes that allegedly depict Bernardo raping their daughters. They want the High Court to turn off the sound. The trial judge has already ruled courtroom spectators can't see the tapes. Today, however, they were allowed to see other videos, ones that show Bernardo and his then-wife Karla Homolka having sex and plotting the rape of young girls.
Before Karla Homolka moved in with Paul Bernardo, she lived here with her family. It was in this house that Bernardo videotaped a family Christmas party, people drinking, Karla's teenage sister Tammy getting drunk.
Oh, there's only one there, right?
There's only one what?
The Crown says she was drugged by Bernardo and Homolka, who raped her before she died. Bernardo's now on trial for raping and murdering 2 other teenage girls. In court, there was another videotape shot in the Homolka home just after Tammy died. Explicit video shown to the jury and the courtroom. In one scene, Homolka dresses up as Tammy and has sex with Bernardo in her dead sister's room. In another scene, they're having sex in the basement, where the Crown says Tammy was raped. Karla says she enjoyed the rape and says to Bernardo, "We like little girls. I like you to have sex with them. And if you're going to have sex with them, then I'm going to have sex with them." Bernardo says, "What age?" Homolka, 13. They'll still be virgins. Bernardo, "I think you're right. Good idea. When did you come up with this idea?" Homolka, "Just now." Later, they talk about raping a teenage girl. Homolka says, "I want to do it again." Bernardo, "When?" Homolka, "This summer." Bernardo, "Will you help me get the virgins?" Homolka, "I'll go in the car with you if you want. I'll do everything I can because I want you to be happy. You're the king." It was a few months after that, Bernardo and Homolka living in this house. The Crown says Bernardo abducted 14-year-old Leslie Mahaffey, raped and killed her. The next year, the Crown says he did the same to 15-year-old Kristen French.
To understanding Paul and Karla's relationship, how he allegedly controlled her, and how the couple fantasized about abducting and assaulting little girls. The video shows Paul and Karla lying in front of a fireplace. They are engaged in oral sex. The dialogue is repulsive. The references to Tammy's death, shocking. Karla talks about enjoying their assault on Tammy. As if following a script, she calls Bernardo the king and talks about finding him 13-year-old virgins. Will you help me get them, Paul asks. Uh-huh, Karla answers. Go in the car with you if you want, or I'll stay here and I'll clean up afterwards. I want you to be happy. You're the king. It's great to be the king, Paul says to the camera lens. When the tape ended, at least half the courtroom spectators left.
I thought it was pretty disgusting, actually.
What did you expect?
Well, I watched it, and then they decided to play the tape again, and I said, that's enough.
Judging from today, I won't be back. But it was one of the most disgusting things I've seen in my life.
Later during the video, the couple is seen in Tammy's upstairs bedroom. Karla is pretending to be her little sister. She and Paul engage in sexual acts. He says, I love you, Tammy, while holding a photo of the dead teenager. These videos were shown in full public view because they did not involve any of the alleged victims. Even so, they appeared too much for many in the courtroom to take.
The Supreme Court has declined to hear an appeal involving videotapes in the Paul Bernardo trial. The parents of the victims in the trial had asked that audio portions of the explicit tapes not be played in open court. More of those tapes were played at the trial today, including one which the Crown says was recorded during murder victim Leslie Mahaffey's last hours.
The Crown has already shown video of Paul and Karla drugging and sexually assaulting Karla's sister, Tammy Homolka. Today, jurors watched a hauntingly similar video, this one shot in the Bernardo home after Tammy's death. This time, the alleged victim is a girl identified only as Jane Doe. Her identity is protected because she is still alive. The Crown paused the tape and asked jurors to note a bottle of liquid anesthetic drug. It was visible in the background. A drug-soaked cloth was being held over Jane Doe's face, just as it had been with Tammy Homolka. Then, the tragic chronology of Leslie Mahaffey's confinement began. The Mahaffey and French families left the courtroom, but later, Debbie Mahaffey returned. She sat with two friends, clutching her chest and weeping. Who is your favorite guy? Paul is heard asking a blindfolded Leslie Mahaffey. I think you know what to say. I want you, Leslie answers. Her voice sounds thick. I'm judging you right now. These next 2 hours are going to determine what I do to you, Bernardo says. And later, good girl, do you want some champagne? In the final segment, Leslie is heard in obvious pain. Just let me go, she pleads. I won't ever say anything about you. I want to see my family and my brother and my friends, please. All of the other videotapes have been played 2 or 3 times, but the judge asked that the last videotape be played only once. Some of the jurors were visibly upset. It's not a pleasant way to end the week, the judge said to them sternly, but that is the evidence.
Pretty disgusting.
Yeah, and that's, you know, and that's all media can say, you know, like that they were still censored then. What you just heard is just like nothing compared to all the things they did. Like, ask Dave, it's true. Unbelievable. I know that was hard to listen to. I know it was. That's why we wanted to warn y'all straight up front. You know, it's rough. Even hearing what the media can say, you know.
Well, you could probably get, I don't know, 100 cases like this and even put them all together and it still wouldn't be as bad as what these two I don't know, lack of words, so-called human beings done to these girls.
Oh my God. And where's Tammy's? It just seems like Tammy's just forgotten. I mean, do I see that wrong or?
No, not at all. It's like the only reason why they played Tammy is to see or to show them that it made no effect over killing Tammy. Is they kept on doing what they were doing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Like where in the hell is the people that's defending her?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know the public is obviously, but I'm talking about, I hate to say it, but even the family.
Yeah. So they could have come back and actually charged both of them afterwards with Tammy's death.
Absolutely.
So
Nobody was charged for Tammy. No. The autopsy ruled her death alcohol poisoning. No foul play. That was what the autopsy said. So nobody was ever charged with Tammy's, nothing that was done to her.
see, they screwed that up too because they went and destroyed the evidence 3 months afterwards too, so they never got to test it to see what it was.
But they saw it on tape.
Yeah.
So there's no denying it.
No.
And they also exhumed her body.
Mm-hmm.
So but nobody was ever charged for Tammy. And it's like, I don't know. It's just something about Tammy that, and of course, Leslie and Kristen, it is unbelievable what was done to those girls. But they did have their families there in support of them. I mean, at one point, you heard one of the mothers made herself sit in that room and listen to that tape because she said, I don't want her to have to suffer alone.
Mm-hmm.
That's man, and you even heard him say that when Tammy's mother was up on stand, I mean, she held her composure. They said her voice crackled just a tad bit when they were talking about and listening and everything with Tammy, what happened to her, and Tammy screaming and gurgling, but that was it. It was, I don't get it, Dave.
No,
I just don't get it. It's like Tammy was forgotten, I just can't. I'm so sorry for her parents. Don't get me wrong. I can't imagine of what they're going through. I mean, Christmas Eve morning, and Tammy just dies from what they're telling them is alcohol poisoning. But let me tell you, why are they allowing her to sit around and get drunk with those two?
Mm-hmm.
Did you not find it weird that Paul would act that messed up when they said she died? The girls are crying, whimpering softly or whatever it was said. But Paul absolutely lost it.
Mm-hmm. It was like he had more feelings for her than he did for Karla.
Well, he told Karla that. He told Karla he truly loved Tammy.
Mm-hmm.
I just, God dang. And he has to go change his pants. She's in there washing clothing and puke. And Paul even saying, there's no drugs here. I promise you that. I mean, why even say that?
Yeah.
And during the trial, it's like mom, dad, and sister is all right there in support of Tammy. What Karla? What about Tammy, man? That really bothers me, Dave. Like a lot. A lot.
I wonder why his parents never showed up.
Never. You never hear anything about his parents. We know. Yeah, like they don't even give a damn. Like we know he came from a very jacked up family. But just to be quite honest, just because they had a pool and a nice house, everybody in the community liked them, kids were popular, I don't care. Karla's family, I know everybody's it's been put out there. They're so great and normal and but great childhood, but I don't know, Dave. There's something
wrong there.
Something that don't set well with me at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not. And you know, you say these things like, well, you can't really, you know, how people grieve differently. And I get that. But when you're literally defending the ones that killed her, that's on a different level.
Completely different, yeah. Especially when they're there, they can hear what's going on. You know, so no matter what Karla had, you know, what story that she came up with, she can't deny it once it's played in the court.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, there's so much here. And I just feel like Tammy has just been completely, just totally nothing, you know? Okay, I have some comments starred up here. So this one, okay, the book. Yeah, that book. Oh my goodness. Invisible Darkness. We dropped the link for that the other night. I think a few people did purchase it. I did. I couldn't get through it. Nelly said she was trying. She couldn't get through it. Those transcripts, or like, I don't even know how the jury or anybody could look at these things or hear these things. And I don't know. And to believe that there's still some people that may not know everything about the case, that thinks that Karla was just a victim.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. How many chances did she have to get away?
That, and it's on a lot of the things that was going on was her idea too. So.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And they kept talking. I can't even. I'm not going to say it. Just can't do it. Let's see.
The last episode should be hopefully filling some gaps with everybody.
Yeah. This is one of the worst cases I've ever. Yeah, it's bad. I don't like that Canada is like this with high profile cases. We still don't get information like America does. It was a deal, you know, and I'm not wanting to put this onto the Watts case because I'm not trying to do that. But these immunity deals, they work that way. Like, that's how they work. And it's just like, okay, I believe NK got immunity and some other people do as well. But here's the thing. If she talked to them at 8 a.m. that morning and they gave her immunity, well, that was before they knew all these lies that we found later in her interviews, right? But the deal was already sealed, so they couldn't go back on it. That's how immunity works. And that's not just in Canada, but it needs to be changed. I think you can renege on deals if they are made under fabrication, under false pretenses. Especially in murder cases, you would think.
Well, the whole thing is you're entering into a plea agreement.
Yeah, under false pretenses.
The truth and everything else. And if you come up and say something or didn't say something that's in the actual facts, then yeah, you should be held accountable for that.
Right. Exactly. Nessie says, I'm unsure as to whether he ever victimized her and how. But even so, she doesn't get a pass in my book. She's still effing terrible. Oh, yes. Now, maybe he did victimize her. We do know that he did beat her up pretty bad. At the same time, she damn sure don't get a pass. Because, y'all, what she did to these little girls, it's, I don't know. I just don't have any words. Like I say, what you just heard in these clips is only the smallest portion of what.
It's not even scraping a barrel or anything like that.
No, and she literally, y'all, she told Paul what to do a lot of times. Yeah. A lot of the things that were done that were so sadistic and morbid and disgusting was her idea. And Paul's like, hell yeah, let's do it. I mean, it was even her that mentioned they need to have 4 kids so they can essay them anytime they want to. That was her mentioning it. And him going, yeah, we do. So to think that she's just this innocent, she's fine, she comes from this great family, it's all bullshit. She's not. Yeah, the book is hard to read. Hard to read.
And that's because it's so graphic.
Oh boy, yeah. I mean, he put the transcript of the tapes in this book. So yeah, it's bad. I couldn't get through much of it at all. Nelly said she literally, vomit, physically sick. Well, you heard that one girl that walked out of the courtroom and saw the video. That was one of the videos they showed was just her and him. And she said, that's the most disgusting thing I've ever in my life looked at. I will not be back tomorrow. Yeah, basically, that's basically what happened, sweet crazy. They just kept doing what they were doing. Yeah, there's people not getting notifications, people that can't comment. They're not on the block list. I don't know what is going on with YouTube. I have no idea. I recommended the one that texted earlier, Nicole. She was telling me that I can't see her comments, and I recommended her to unsub and then resub and see if everything resets or something, because I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I couldn't control myself in court either. Nope. We were talking earlier. I could not. I just couldn't. Nope. I want to give her mother a bit. Yeah. Leslie's parents is what gets me so hard, to be quite honest. Hard. Because they locked her out of the house, because of her curfew. Again, I mean, and I'm not judging, and I know it was a different time, but 14 years old out partying until 2 o'clock in the morning when there is a known artist in the area, the Scarborough rapist. They were warning everybody in that area to be on high alert, and I just, and I'm not going to say it's the parents' fault. Hell, teenagers do shit, they don't come home from school and they go do shit,
Well, they're invincible.
Exactly. I mean, at least you're hearing the truth about the little girl. She got out there and did stuff her parents told her not to do. They're not putting her out to be glitter and gold. They're just being honest. She's a kid, and at the same time, that's scary, man, knowing that that Scarborough rapist, everybody was being warned and everything, and right there in the area. And maybe she hadn't heard about it. I'm thinking maybe her parents didn't watch the news, read the papers, and it happens, but and then they locked her out of the house, and they blame themselves every damn day, and they shouldn't do that. It's not their fault. People like that, just like with Kristen, they don't care. They abducted her in broad daylight in a church parking lot. Yeah, where is Tammy's justice? There is some of their videos online, not those, because those were destroyed. But there is wedding videos, like Christmas, their honeymoon, that kind of thing, but not those. Those have been destroyed. Yeah, when he was in Florida, I wonder what he was doing. I know that they were, I bet they were smuggling cigarettes because that's what they did for a living. They would leave Canada and smuggle cigarettes across the border and like sell them for like triple, I guess, what they were bought them for. So I know that's what they were doing for a living for what did they say, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, 5 years.
Yeah, because neither one of them worked. That's what they did. And when you look at their house and see how furnished it was, obviously they were making pretty damn good money smuggling cigarettes across the border. Karla was at the animal clinic. That's right. Karla worked at the animal clinic for a little bit. I don't know how long she worked there.
Isn't that crazy? She quit the one place because she said that they weren't being humane to the animals.
Yes. Yeah, she quit one because they were being mean to the animals. Well, they also said that the only time she ever gave Paul any kind of backlash was when he was being mean to her dog.
Right.
Like, it didn't matter what in the hell he was doing to these little girls. The only time she got mad about that's when those little girls drank out of her champagne glass. She didn't care about that. But don't mess with my dog. Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, I think it was, yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, the jury, if I was on the jury, I could have looked at the transcript and been like, oh, hell no, you know, but I get it. I get what you're saying for the jury to actually see it. But what's so jacked up about it? Even the jury seeing it didn't change anything, really. Because Karla still only got 12 years. And of course, he did get life, but they gave him the possibility of parole, which I don't understand, but they did. Where the hell was she supposed to go? And I just get, oh my God, yeah, it's bad. I thought if Karla lied, then the deal should have been received. That's what I would think, but obviously there wasn't a stipulation in there about false pretenses. Obviously there wasn't, because if there was, maybe we can pull up that plea deal online and just give it a look. I don't know. It should be public, but I'd just like to give it a look. I'd also like to see Tammy's autopsy report, because they did exhume her body. Yeah, the evidence is gone. Yeah, Letitia Stouts. Someone also suggested that we put her in the lineup for Skankers Ball, and we did. She is a real skanker. Oh, she is a skanker. Yeah, she did. You sure would be hard pressed to find a skankier skank. I know. We were okay, y'all. At the end of the year, we're gonna have one show, and it's the Skanker Ball Awards, and everybody's gonna be able to vote on who they think is the biggest skanker of the year. And we'll change the thumbnail and always have, you know, that skanker of the year on every thumbnail in small, you know, because we want to expose her for what she is, you know, continue to expose. So that's what we're going to do. And like we said earlier, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. It really is, because they're all skankers. Karla's a big time skanker. Casey Anthony is a pretty bad skanker herself. Like, can you even choose between these people, Dave? I don't know. Letitia, Susan Smith, Diane Downs. These people are horrific. And then we're even going to pull in some that y'all may not have heard of, and show you how much of a skank they are. So Lisa Montgomery, skanks. So I don't even know how we're going to vote on these skanks. Yeah, Skanker of the year. That's right. We're going to continue to expose them all year a little bit. Sure are. Is that typical for Canada, Dave?
Oh,
No?
no.
No, I think it was just it was a time thing. It was that attorney keeping those tapes and not telling anyone until after that plea deal was made.
See, that's why I wonder if there was more victims that he never released all the tapes.
That's a hell of a likely, because was he disbarred or just
He had to remove himself because he did hold back evidence.
Okay, because I know that he did. I know he did have to go up for obstruction of justice, and I think they cleared him of it somehow. He wasn't actually ever sentenced for it, but he was charged for obstruction of justice, and I didn't know if he got disbarred for it or not. He should have.
He should have, yeah. Well, especially going back into that house on his own, and then grabbing these instead of telling the police where they were. So that there tells me he went in there to get evidence so it wouldn't be as hard on his client.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a video on Lizzie Borden. Yes. I don't know about Lizzie. A lot of people think she's guilty. A lot of people think she's innocent. I think she's guilty, but it's either her or the uncle, but I lean more so towards her. If you're going to throw her in, then it's going to be a hard choice. Yeah, it's going to be a hard choice. It's going to be a hell of a hard choice.
I agree with you. I think she did. I think she did it. So, other one, not the little sister.
Lizzie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think she's guilty. Yeah, I did a hell of a video on her, like a long, long time ago. A Winchester home is another good one. Y'all should check that out. I don't know if y'all know about the Winchester legend and the Winchester home. I want to go there, but that is one crazy ass story. And the video I did on it, I show the house and we walked through it, kind of a virtual walkthrough, and the legend and the story behind it. The Winchester ammo. You know what I'm talking about? The Winchester guns. Well, it's them people. And now the Winchester home is like a museum. And it's just crazy. But that's one of my favorite bedtime stories. That one in Lizzie Borden that I did. Yeah. Yeah, that's if I recommend any of my bedtime stories, it's Lizzie, the Winchester home. That's crazy. Yeah, Mac Joe, you should check it out. I got a playlist on here called Bedtime Stories, True Crime Bedtime Stories, and the Winchester home. Lizzie, well, hell, they're all pretty good, really. But Lizzie, the Winchester, and which other ones, Dave, Nelly?
I can't remember, sorry.
God, there's so many of them. Yeah, there's several. I got the Green River Killer in there. There's some pretty good documentary things in there. If he held back stuff purposely, wouldn't he have hid the Tammy tape too? Or was that recorded on the same tape as Kristen and Leslie? No, the Tammy tape was actually written in Karla's handwriting. It had big hearts and stickers all over it. And it said Tammy, Paul, and I. And so it was on its own tape, but it was also, you know, the Christmas video you just watched, and they were talking about seeing the Christmas lights and all. It's all the same tape. From the way I understood it, it's all on the same tape. Yeah, it's pretty good. Check out that playlist, y'all. I think if you're bored, you'll like it. I had like the rain ambient sounds in the background. You know, it's some of them's pretty ratchet, but that's what true crime's about. Yes, What's Wednesday tomorrow? Part 4 of Skankers will be following on Thursday night. But yeah, What's Wednesday tomorrow night? Oh, I know you have, Mary. You're an OG, and we really appreciate you, sweetheart. We really, really do. You're usually the first to comment. You're always there for us. All right, y'all. Do y'all have any questions or anything? No? Okay, well, y'all go check out them bedtime stories. I'm going to let Dave and Nelly get some sleep because I know they're give out. And we'll see you What's people tomorrow night for What's Wednesday.
Night, everyone.
Night, everybody. Thanks, mods, and thanks, everybody, for being here with us tonight. Y'all have a good night. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for watching, and do not forget to subscribe, like, share, and leave us a comment below on your thoughts of this video. And until